How do we prepare Florida's students to be successful academically and transform them into our state's future workforce? We'll talk about schools and learning with Gerard Robinson, Florida's Education Commissioner, next on UCF Metro Center Outlook.
This program is made possible by funding from the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.
Hello everyone, welcome to UCF Metro Center Outlook. I'm Diane Trees, Director of the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies and your host for Metro Center Outlook. Joining us today is Florida's Commissioner of Education, Gerard Robinson. We'll talk to the first-generation college graduate about managing budgets, preparing students for college and careers, and retaining Florida's graduates for the workforce. But first, let's take a look at virtual learning, a form of education gaining momentum across the country.
The mission of Florida Virtual School is to deliver a quality, technology-based education that supports students to learn the skills and knowledge they need for success. We focus very much on students as the individual and feel that every student has a unique learning style and deserves a path that is unique to their needs as a student. Florida Virtual School actually provides over 125 individual courses. We have courses that are electives, courses that are core, courses that are AP, world languages, as well as credit recovery. Our courses actually range anywhere from Algebra 1 as a core course to music appreciation or driver's ed. And then we also have middle school art and we also have AP art. So we have a vast variety of courses to offer our students.
Florida Virtual School developing curriculum is slightly different than developing something for a classroom. At Florida Virtual School, when we develop a course, we put together a team of curriculum designers to work on the development project. And that team comes together to storyboard out the course and decide what learning strategies need to be used to best meet the needs of the student. We use games and simulations in a variety of ways, and that runs the gamut from a very small interactive as a part of a lesson where students can simply practice something that they've learned using media or some type of self-assessment, all the way blown out to some type of themed game that runs throughout the whole course. It's really important for students to have that safe time to practice skills. And often games can give you that, and they can also give you the opportunity to practice your problem-solving skills because a game can move a student through a variety of scenarios where they can apply what they're learning.
We also look for opportunities to provide simulations for students. So for example, if they're in a chemistry class or a physics class, they can blow things up without blowing things up through the new opportunities of simulations for kids. Virtual learning really has the capacity to have a huge impact on student performance and student success.
Joining me now is Gerard Robinson, Florida's Commissioner of Education. Commissioner, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you're the first person in your family to go to college, but I've heard you say that you weren't the model student while you were growing up. Talk a little bit about your educational journey.
Well, first of all, thank you for extending the invitation to have a conversation with you about education. My parents, like many others, were very supportive of education and the importance of what it would mean to me long term. But like many young guys, I decided I wanted to play football. And football for me was a path to prosperity. I wanted to go to college, not to earn a degree, but to make it into the NFL. And you hear all the statistics that only X number of players will ever make it, and I figured, that won't be me, I'll become a player.
So that was your motivation for school?
It was to go to college, absolutely. It was never to get a degree, it was just a stepping stone into the NFL. And in my senior year, unfortunately, I was hurt in a football accident. In fact, was 2 inches from being crippled for life. And reality set in. And so I walked into my senior year with a 1.8 GPA and had to make some quick changes. I was able to graduate and then enrolled into a community college and spent 3 years there while I worked full-time at a grocery store. and made a commitment to myself that if I finished, then I would go to college and, make a real strong dedication to the field of education.
Your previous position was with the state of Virginia as
Correct.
Education Commissioner. While you were there, you helped pass some legislation, Top Jobs for the 21st Century, linking higher ed with economic development. Is that one of the priorities that you bring to Florida? Obviously, that had an instrumental part of,
Sure.
of your journey through your college years.
Well, Governor Scott is a big believer that jobs matter, and he believes that to have a great job, you need to have a great education. Similar philosophy was shared with Governor Bob McDonnell in Virginia. There was a focus on top jobs for the 21st century, and so I'm only walking into another situation where a governor and the state legislature says, you know what, we want to make jobs matter. And we know there's a strong link between jobs and the economy. And so having had the chance to go through a full commission with public and private sector employees and educators, and to really say that to maintain our social, academic, but also our military strong mean in the nation and the world, you need an educated workforce. And so glad to be in a position here in Florida to move that agenda.
You have a 4C new motto. Talk a little bit about that, and how does that fit in with the strategic plan for the DOE?
So I created my first week at the Florida Department of Education.
First week.
My motto, and it's called the 4 C's. We're supporting colleges, careers, commerce, and creativity. And so on the college standpoint, we've got some great colleges, the Florida State University system, as well as our Florida college system. We need to prepare students to be college and career ready. We know that approximately a third of our students left our fine public high schools and went directly into the workforce. Many others went into to college, and so we need to make that as a pathway. Some leave with great certificates, whether they're certified in a particular computer area or whether they're coming out with different skills. So for me, colleges are important, but also careers. I'm very clear that while every student should be prepared for colleges or careers, those who want to go straight into the workforce, we need that to happen. And to build our economy, we need to make sure we do so with 21st century skills. The third C is commerce. This is really a good opportunity for the business sector to be involved. Earlier today I had a chance to speak to the Seminole County
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce, and economics and education development go hand in hand. And the fourth is creativity. We're in some lean economic times. We've seen a downturn in the economy in ways that we haven't in a generation. And so I take the NOAA approach that it's going to take a partnership for us to sail the seas of economic uncertainty in order for us to land at a good spot to where we can move forward.
You've talked about the need for partnerships, and it's becoming increasingly important, crucial for public education to have those partnerships. How do you see your role in fostering those kinds of relationships?
Well, I've had a chance to meet with some business leaders at the state level, whether it's Susan Paragus with the Council of 100. Had a chance to talk to her leadership. They've got 6 pillars that drive their agenda.
Yes.
Guess what? Number 1 is education. I've talked to Mark at the Chamber of Commerce. I've had a chance to meet with his team. We talk monthly, and I've had a chance to work with him. The business community said, Gerard, what can we do? The first thing they can do is work on the legislative side, but that's only a season. I have 365 days to make sure that our students are involved in some type of educational, academic, or career activity. And so they're starting to partner with some of our schools. And so partnerships exist, but because we find ourselves in some dire straits, we have to be smart on how to make it work better.
You've said that we need an exceptional education in Florida, the system, not merely an acceptable one. And yet we do have budget issues at a state level and also our local levels. So what are some of those creative ideas that I've heard you talk about before?
Sure. Well, when Governor Scott said my main initiative is to make sure that education is important, so we put an additional $1 billion in the K-12. No other governor in the nation has done that. So that's important. Number 2 is we say if we're going to focus on degrees that matter, what degrees matter? We know that we have 10 new jobs today that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so on one hand, you have the state university system with its strategic plan from 2012 to 2025, taking a strong look at STEM education, doubling the number of graduates we have, increasing the number of minority graduates we have in STEM. At the Florida college system, we're doing the same thing as well in terms of making that happen. But we're doing a better job of talking across the line, because too often K-12 has done, we've done ourselves a disservice as a state not to have very good articulation agreements and conversations about it.
So we are doing a better job at aligning our curriculum with what our business needs are? Or?
Well, it's actually both. So business will say, we need to make sure our students have the appropriate skills. And so you've got Jimmy Davis at STEM Florida, who's working with the Council 100 and the Department of Education on a project to create a coding system to make sure that when a student graduates, that code is actually in line with business. Can't say it always has been, so that's one project that we're proud of.
Do you think that we are getting more input from businesses?
We definitely are. You know, when they come to all the state leadership, they say, guess what? We need to keep, attract, retain, and invite businesses here. And a lot of our businesses are small businesses.
Yes.
And they're saying, you know, we're having a hard time finding people within our zip code to give a great job to. And so either they're going to Georgia or Alabama to find employees, or sometimes they're coming from overseas. And we want to encourage that. But we've got a homegrown talent here that we need to make sure that we educate to have an opportunity to have those jobs.
There's a study out of the Brookings Institute right now that lists or ranks South Florida as one of the 5 metro areas that are losing young people for jobs. They can't find them here, they're going out of state. Do you feel that that's a real problem for us, a draining power of our intellectual capacity, that we don't have those jobs, we're not practically training educating our children, and so they're going elsewhere?
So we have a Sunshine Scholars Program here in Florida. The Department of Education is involved. Had an opportunity to meet some of our best and brightest students. The goal is to try to keep as many as we can in the state of Florida. A number of them are going out of state, and I had a chance to talk to some. They said, you know, I had better academic opportunities in a different state, and so what I've got to do is take that on as a challenge to figure out what do we need to do, high school and post-secondary, to keep them here. But it's also analogous to jobs. Some of them said, you know what, I just have better opportunities in the Northeast or maybe West in California. We've got to find out how to keep our best and brightest here. It's not a new problem, but it's a curious problem, because we're at a time where if we've got to import talent at the same time we're exporting talent, we've got the
that's not a good situation. That's
direction.
right. We've talked about the importance of higher education, but a lot of our graduates from high school aren't necessarily looking to go any higher or don't want to go any higher. Perhaps they're not ready to do so. What is the value of the vocational or technical education? I know it's not an academic advancement, but it is a knowledge-based advancement.
So my stepfather worked for Lockheed for 47 years before it became Lockheed Martin, and he had a high school diploma. He was an airplane wing mechanic. Today, my stepfather couldn't have that job because it required, if not a college degree, but it required additional training. And so with our CTE centers throughout Florida, a number of our students are getting some hands-on training, walking away from high school with certification certificates to get great jobs that are great paying. I think, unfortunately, in our conversation about promoting college, we somehow have indirectly said working with your hands or working in a craft isn't important.
The connotation is there that it's not as significant, when that's
Correct.
Not the case at all.
Because you can't work with your hands without having a brain to make it happen.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of the high school graduate. What is the economic impact when a student does not graduate from high school?
Well, we know 3 things. Number one, a student who graduates from high school is more likely to earn a better living than someone who can. That's number one. Number 2, we know there's a correlation between those who didn't finish high school and their involvement in the criminal justice system. Third, we know that people who did not complete high school also are having problems on the social side of the fence, dealing with families, children, and otherwise. Not to say that those with high school diploma have no challenges, but you've minimized some of the economic and social challenges that come along without having certain skill sets.
How are we doing in Florida? I know there's some controversy about the way rates are calculated for graduation rates, but how are we doing overall?
Well, we have a 10-year high graduation rate. 80% of our students are graduating in a 4-year period. As a state, we're getting ready to move over to a federal rating. There will be a 10% drop in graduation.
I was reading about that, yes.
Simply because special diplomas will no longer count as part of the calculation. So it has a lot more to do with calculation than it does with output. Students are still coming out of our schools in pretty good shape, and we've got to make sure we can continue to make that happen.
How are we doing for retention for our minority students or our students from low-income families?
So there was the SHOT report, which took a look at a number of our large districts, particularly as it related to African-American men. There's some positive stories. I mean, if you take a look at, for example, Miami-Dade, I think they're number 7 in the nation for the number of African-American students who are scoring 3 or better on the AP. Even in Seminole, you've got a number of African-American students who are leaving here and with some very good scholarships in hand academically. And if you go further, actually Orlando, and actually if you go further north in Leon County, where the capital is located. Some of their Hispanic and African American students are getting some great scholarships and actually are doing well. I mean, if you look at the ranking that we had of school districts across the state, Gaston County, which is a neighbor of Leon County, while it has the highest percentage of students on free and reduced price lunch at about 89%, the 10th highest performing elementary school in the state is in that district. If you go a few blocks down, the 25th highest performing middle school in the same area with great poverty. And so we know that we can change the outcomes of students, whether there's poverty or prosperity.
So it's a quality of the school is what you're saying.
Quality of the school, and we know teachers matter.
Yes. We have another unique, we have many problems, but another issue here is the number of students in Florida who have English as a second language.
Correct.
How do those students, as well as those students with special needs, how are they factoring into the accountability standards now?
Well, we're actually wrapping up our work. We had a commissioner's task force on accountability and inclusion, and we took a look at students, ELL and others. 51% of all ELL students in Florida were actually born in Florida. When you look at their achievement.
An interesting statistic.
Yeah, people would think it was very different, but it's actually 51%. When you take a look at their achievement over 10 years on FCAT or other assessments, the numbers are moving in the right direction. Surely we can do more to make sure we provide those services, but some good results.
We opened the show with a clip on virtual education. What are your thoughts for where that's headed, virtual education and online education for us?
Well, Florida's been a leader in that area with Florida Virtual. The board, in fact, gave me the task to have a 2.0 Florida Digital Working Group. We had our meeting a week ago, and we're actually going to present some recommendations to the board next week at our meeting. I would tell you that virtual or digital learning is one of probably the only public policy issue that's a decade ahead of our practice. And some of it's generational. Young people are very savvy when it comes to technology.
You are very savvy with the technology.
Well, my daughter would probably say something different. But we're moving in the right direction, and I see the digital revolution being very similar to what the printing press did for changing literacy.
That much. You are very tech savvy, and you also use social media quite frequently and well to communicate. How do you see technology then fitting into the classroom, and what's the right amount? Is there a right amount?
Well, the right amount depends on whether you're over 40 or under 40. If you're under 40, they'll say we need more. If you're over 40,
and if you're like me, you say no.
Yeah, we've had enough. It's definitely generational. You know, we've got the first time in American history where the generation before us is much more sophisticated in technology than we were. I don't see that as a bad thing. We're lifelong learners, and so again, it'll change literacy. It will invite more seniors into the education arena. You know, my father-in-law watched Saul Khan on 60 Minutes. And he called me. He said, you know, and he's just in his 70s. And he said, watching him made me realize that I can actually get on my computer and learn something brand new without having to leave my home. So this will span space and time.
And you said that lifelong learning is one of your philosophies. Actually, with your leadership and the mission of the DOE, what are your priorities for education?
Well, it falls into the college's careers, commerce, and creativity. It's to make sure that every student leaves high school, college, and career ready. It's to make sure that we make our schools affordable at the post-secondary level. It's to make sure that the business community understands they have a role to play. They're definitely a consumer of the work that we do, but they also have to be an investor. And so that's a role that philanthropy can play. Fourth is to make sure that we realize that Orlando is in conversation not only with Seminole, but also with New York City and also with other countries. And then fifth would be to really push that this is the best time in the history of Florida to be a student. We know more about the importance of early learning, the role of the brain in development. And so this is just an exciting time to be a human being involved in education.
If money, hypothetically, if money were not the issue, what would be your two top priorities for K through 12 and then for higher ed?
So investing even before pre-K all the way to age 10, putting a strong investment in making sure that we encourage students to think broadly about a lot of issues and to make sure we make that investment. We know what the brain research is telling us. Let's do it early. At the college level is to make sure that students realize you can major in, for example, philosophy and still find yourself getting a job in the STEM industry. When we talk about STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you can major in the arts, You can major in the humanities, in the social sciences, and still have a career there. It's not engineering only, but it also can be another subject.
I don't think people understand that the STEM, the philosophy for there is critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills. It's not just the straight math, engineering, and that. There's a whole realm. How do the arts and social sciences then fit into that?
I had an opportunity to deliver a lecture on the importance of the arts in STEM education. My degree's in philosophy, so I've got a vested interest in mentioning philosophy. But when you talk to leaders from other countries, I've had a chance to do so, they said one thing about the American system, you guys look over at us and say, wow, they're doing strong and doing well in engineering and math and science. He said, but your students are well-rounded. They're doing well in science, but they're also very creative. And that's what makes America unique, and it's made us unique all the way from the time of the Revolution, is that the individual spirit for creativity and entrepreneurship is fostered in America in ways you don't see in other countries. And so as we pursue STEM, let's not lose the aspect of creativity, which comes often through the humanities and social science.
I think some of our economic times, too, are fostering the creativity aspect because we don't have the financial backing that we did just a few years ago. You mentioned the pre-K program for the state. 75% of all 4-year-olds are enrolled in our pre-K program, but we're 34th out of 39 states for funding. Are we missing opportunities to prepare that early on for school readiness with those children?
Well, I'm proud that 75% are in there.
That's an amazing figure.
Yeah, higher than anyone else in the country. In terms of number, we're about third. If you take a look at how much we spend per student, we're in the 40s. If you look at how much we spend for teachers, we're also in the 40s. Florida, because of the number of students we have and the size of the state and our funding mechanism, we won't often find ourselves in the top 10 for a whole set of reasons. Now, that's no excuse not to invest, but there are structural challenges that make it improbable to compare us to another state where they may be number 1 or number 2. I know the board is committed. It's August 23rd meeting last year, made a strong commitment to put more money into VPK. We saw that commitment honored by the legislature. I know the governor is very interested as well in trying to invest early. So more we can do on the financial side, but here's a partnership opportunity. If we can't make it up with state dollars, here's an opportunity for the business and philanthropic community to come in and try to match that investment.
And that's one of your priorities to work with.
Correct.
How are you reaching out to the school administrators, superintendents, and the teachers with the rapid rate of reform? How are you reaching out to include them into discussions in the planning?
So there's a monthly discussion that my team has with superintendents. I'm on the majority of them, some that I'm not on. So that's one way. Number 2, I have a chance to go and visit superintendents, and they'll open up their doors to school board members, and we have a frank conversation about reform. You know, we've changed the achievement scores for reading from grade 3 to 10, for mathematics grades 3 to 8. We've also changed what it relates to for performance and learning gains. So there's a lot of reform, and so part of what I'm doing even with this opportunity is to say that you're going to see some changes in the letter grades. You're going to see some going south before north. Won't be the first time that's happened. When Florida's made changes in the past, you saw a dip and then you found a change. For me, I don't want people to think that suddenly Florida's become a bad state to send your kids to school. It's just that we're actually changing the metrics to better prepare them from a Florida that we didn't inherit 10 years ago.
So you were satisfied with the revisions in the grading formula that passed, but the plan was a little bit changed from the way it first went in.
Yeah, because there were segments that were in learning gains but not performance. We're now putting them in learning gains and performance. We don't want to hide any children. You know, one thing, as you know, Florida received a waiver for No Child Left Behind. There are debates of whether No Child Left Behind was great or not. What I will say is, by making a focus on accountability and also looking at subgroups, it put adults in a very interesting spot, because for too long, through statistics, we were able to hide kids and to masquerade how poorly they were doing, and sometimes inflating how well they were doing. By saying that we want you to look across the board at subgroups, and you need to be accountable, and the rewards and sanctions, I mean, that was healthy. And so Florida's still moving forward with our waiver in the right direction, but we can't allow adults to manipulate data and situations to make students look better or worse than they are.
You've been here almost a year now. Are there any surprises or discoveries that you've made about the state, good or bad, since you've taken over the position?
Well, Florida's been a reform state for a long time, and so reform is moving forward. One challenge would be some people are comfortable with what we have. It's been working. It's not broken. Why fix it? And in fixing something, you're not saying it's broken. You're just simply saying I'm going to make it work better. So more conservative in terms of reform, and some of the conservatism is actually coming from the reformers. One thing I'm pleased to see is that when I talk to moms and dads and taxpayers and others, they said, you know what, at the end of the day, we want to make sure we have a strong world-class education system. And to make that happen, we have to raise the standards. That will surely mean that there is going to be some tough times, but we believe that 5 and 10 years from now we'll be a better state because of it.
I attended a program recently that had a number of school administrators, teachers in the audience, and part of the discussion, perception from them, was reforms were coming rapidly and perhaps not the chance to see the interactive effects and consequences of one set before another set is introduced. Is that a concern?
Well, it's a concern. I had one superintendent said it was too fast, too soon, and my reply is, well, if not now, when? There comes a point where people want to slow walk us into improvement. And if for 10 years you didn't make major changes to your assessment system, I think a decade is a good time. We think from a national level, we look at every 10 years the census. Why? So we can plan who's going to be in office, well, the lines for office and others. What I also think from a census standpoint, after 10 years, it's time for us to also look at the next 10 years. And to do that, we have to walk backwards and say, this is the time to make it happen. I won't pretend that it's not a lot of change, but with a lot of change will come a lot of good results.
We touched on a myriad of issues with education, and I think it highlights the complexity of the subject. Are you confident that with the budget issues, reform issues that we have, that we'll be able to achieve that the exceptional education system that we all really want to have?
Well, I believe it will, because you have local leaders who work with their school boards, sometimes with billion-dollar budgets to invest, and so money matters. What matters most is how you invest it and where you invest it. At the state level, we've got a commitment from our Board of Education to make sure that we use our strategic plan, which in fact next week we're going to review to make sure we're walking into the next 2 or 3 years in good shape. Governor Scott is very clear that work matters, and in fact part of my agenda, we have a messaging called Education Works. It says it all right there. And you also have people who expect Florida to remain a leader in education, a leader in the economy, not only for the United States, for the world. So with a combination of all those in place and goodwill, we'll make it happen.
Commissioner, thank you for your time and taking to be here today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I've been talking about the future of education in Florida with Gerard Robinson, the state's education commissioner. Thank you for tuning in to UCF Metro Center Outlook. Until next time, I'm Diane Trees.
This program was made possible by funding from the Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.